Hey guys, Teeble here. Today we're going to be taking a look at the Graf Spee, the Tier 5 German premium cruiser. Got a couple games for it. Here's my Von Mueller build. Obviously I haven't had the chance to level him up quite yet. I got the German commanders kind of after I leveled up, or played through the cruiser line, so he's been put on the back burner, but he's working for now. This first match I'll just kind of go over the ship and impressions of it, and then the second match we'll just kind of narrate through the game and see how it plays a little bit more in depth. The Graf Spee, it's called a pocket battleship, and essentially it's a cruiser in terms of armor with battleship guns, German battleship guns in particular, so the dispersion is a little wonky. I do have Norm Scott maxed out, so, you know, well, not completely maxed out, but level 16 plus 1, I believe, so the precision or the accuracy is influenced as highly as you can really get it based on the current commanders available, so keep that in mind. You know, the accuracy kind of reminds you of the Scharnhorst a little bit. Or, I haven't played much of the German battleships, but I'm assuming most of them are kind of similar, so. HP for the tier, you got just shy of 40k, which is the highest. The next one is the Pensacola at 32.7, so quite a bit more HP there. Armor's 13 to 170. The next one up at the tier is 6 to 105 on the Aoba. And torpedo reduction, you got 22% if it hits you in the torpedo belt. So in terms of armor, it's definitely more heavily armored than a cruiser. But if you go over to like the battleships, the Bayern for instance, you got 43.9 for HP, and that's not upgraded. It's probably upper or mid 50s, I guess. 13 to 350 on the armor, so considerably less armor than battleships. More than your normal cruisers, though. Guns on the Graf Spee, you got 2 turrets, 3 guns each, 283 caliber. So again, bigger guns for the tier compared to cruisers. Looks like you got 380s on the Bayern, though. So I mean, it's kind of in the middle. It's actually, yeah, it's 283s are the same guns as the Scharnhorst, so interesting kind of mix. But kind of the problem you're running with the ship is it kind of feels like a battleship. So if you're not kind of remembering what you're doing when you're playing it, you can kind of start playing it as though you are a battleship, and then that's a good way to get smoked. Because if you're taking shots from like a Colorado, Nagato, ships like these, or, you know, even your tier 5 battleships, those are a major threat to you. I mean, even when you try and angle your armor, it can punch through successfully. If you get hit in the citadel in the side of this thing, I mean, you're not set up to deal with battleships shooting at you, is my point. So you combine like inaccurate German battleship guns with a cruiser body, which you can't really get into these close range brawling situations with battleships. So you have this little debate going on in your mind, like, or two different polls. Like, you kind of want to play longer range as though you're in a cruiser, which you are, but you don't really have the accuracy compared to like a lot of other cruisers. So keep that in mind. I mean, it's a very unique ship. If you want to buy one premium that you were thinking like, oh, let's say with the ranked battles that are coming out, if it's a tier 5 season, this wouldn't be the ship that I would want to pick. I played 11 battles in it so far. I think I'm 7-4 was my record in it. And it is Scrub City out there today for whatever reason. I think Labor Day, a lot of people are off, possibly drinking. I don't know. But, you know, I mean, low DPM cruiser, so it's hard to do a lot of damage. I think these two games that I'm showing here, I believe, are my highest damage, which they're both about double the HP, maybe a little bit lower even. And I'm not saying you can't get really good damage games, but what your main strength in the ship is kind of deleting broadside cruisers. So because of that, it's kind of a situational ship. Like, it doesn't do that great against battleships. You'll see, I think, in this game and maybe more in the second game, we're shooting at some battleships as well. But, you know, if you hit them with a fair amount of shells, you might get 3, 4, or 5k damage if you're lucky. You're not really going to be citadeling battleships at waterline. All I'm aiming is typically upper hull into the superstructure, and that's the kind of damage you can expect. Cruisers, you know, if you hit them broadside, you can definitely wreck those quite effectively, so that's where it shines. The problem that the Graf Spee has is usually cruisers are going to be wanting to deal with destroyers. The ship isn't really that effective at dealing with it. Again, inaccurate guns, slow loading guns, so by the time you switch over to HE, the target may have moved out of range, or you might get maybe one salvo in before, you know, it gets into smoke or whatever. So it's not really, if you compare it to like a de Grasse or a Nuremberg, Aoba, Pensacola. I mean, Pensacola is not the greatest at destroyers, but most of those ships are pretty good at eliminating destroyers. Graf Spee, take the shots at them, you know, but it doesn't shine at eliminating destroyers. It does have sonar, which is very nice, especially for, you know, if you get those situations where destroyers do sneak up on you, you can kind of deploy that. And it's the same sonar that the Nuremberg has, so 3.6 torp detection, 5.2 ships, which is pretty good, you know. So it's effective sonar. And the other thing you'll notice on this is you do have a heal. I think this is the only cruiser that we have so far that has a heal. And again, that's kind of the blend of the battleship play with the cruiser play. But you don't want to be relying on, I mean, you kind of just need to play the ship really carefully. Like, if you're angling your armor against cruisers, you can bounce a lot of shells. If you angle against battleships, you're not going to have a lot of success. You might eliminate some of the citadel shots you take if you're pointed fully broadside, but you're still going to be taking a lot of damage, especially when you're low tier against tier 6 battleships. So, you know, I think it's a high skill cap ship. Definitely, if this is like you're considering a first premium ship, I probably wouldn't go with Graf Spee. If you're interested in the German battleships, I think you might be interested in the ship, but again, the confusion with the ship is you kind of wind up playing it with the battleship mentality, and that's not how it works. So I think, but in general, I think fans of the German lines, especially the battleship lines, would probably like this ship. But again, I don't think it's the strongest tier 5 in terms of performance. I've only played, you know, 11 games like I mentioned, but if I was going to bet my life on winning one game, this would not be the ship I hopped into. The torps on the ship are really good. You got 8-kilometer range, 65 knots in the water, which is the fastest torps out of the cruisers at tier 5. And although it's outranged by the Aoba and de Grasse, you know, because of that speed, they're pretty effective. And they're the same torps in terms of damage, 13,700 as the Nuremberg. So not the hardest hitting, but that's typical German torpedoes. They don't tend to be all that hard hitting, but like I say, I mean, because of that, the range and the speed, they actually are pretty good. So I've been able to put together some torp strikes here, or in the games I played. It looks like I've hit one so far in this one. So it's an interesting package all around, you know. If you're looking for like a unique ship, you know, the Graf Spee definitely fits that build. But you know, just to reiterate, I think it's a harder ship to play, and I don't think it's the strongest ship at tier 5. So keep those in mind if you're considering playing it. I have had fun playing it, but you know, it is kind of situational. If you get in games with a lot of cruisers, you can be pretty effective there. If you get a lot of even the games with a lot of either destroyers or a lot of battleships, then you're kind of forced to, you know, adjust how you're playing. accordingly. So, all in all, I mean, I don't know if I'd necessarily recommend it or not. If what I've described kind of fits the bill of what you're looking for, then I'd say you'd probably enjoy it. If you're looking for like a really strong premium, though, this wouldn't necessarily be the strongest recommendation. My premium time has run out, by the way, so if you're looking at the credits earned and XP and stuff like that, keep that in mind. Normally my replays, well, all of them have had premium time up until now, so that'll look a little bit different. So here we do have a match on Two Brothers. We are low tier in this one. This is kind of a map that I don't know if it necessarily favors the Graf Spee, but this is kind of how I would recommend playing. I mean, you kind of have to play it at range early on, and then as the game unfolds, you're able to kind of read the situation and deploy your asset accordingly. So this destroyer right here, I mean, I think there were guys on the other side kind of asking for his help. The destroyers, you need to play the wings, alright? If like, going up the gut, there's no reason to do it because you're going to die anyways. But the destroyers need to be scouting for the team. You can see the one on the east side of the map is going out. Where typically, when I'm playing destroyers on this map, I'll just kind of sail directly east or west, and that'll kind of put you in a position. A lot of destroyers will kind of sail directly at the other team, so that's where they're expecting to find you. If you swing further out, though, you can scout effectively, and you won't, like, their guns won't be pre-aimed at you when you are detected. So just a little tip for destroyers. Looks like the other guy on the west side is turning around to scout. A little late though, but better late than never. So here we do have Fuso poking out and a Mayoko. The Mayoko initially looked like it was gonna kind of sit behind the island, so I took a shot at the Fuso there. But this is what you want to be doing. You want to be shooting at cruisers broadside if possible. Now the HE, I don't know if I mentioned earlier, the fire chance on this Graf Spee is it's pretty high. What is it? Where did it go? 23.5, so that's considerably higher than the other cruisers. But again, the game typically balances fire chance with reload time. So the slower your reload, basically the higher the fire chance. Now it's not a directly proportional relationship. Obviously it matters on the ship, but that's why it goes up. But you can have a fair amount of success firing fire or starting fires if you're shooting HE. But if you're looking for targets like this, AP is the shot you want to be loading in there. I thought he was going to kind of zoom forward, so I aimed that one a little bit forward, or a little bit more in front of him than was needed, unfortunately, so he was able to escape there. But once he gets angled, you can still do some damage. You can punch through. I mean, these are technically battleship guns, but you know, you're looking for those broadside cruisers typically. Like you can see there, I mean, that's representative. Still, you know, I mean, 23, 25, whatever it was. Decent damage. But because he's getting into cover here, we're going to take a shot at the Colorado. Now this is long range battleship. I mean, the dispersion is going to be wild enough that even if you were aiming at waterline, it's not like the shells are going to go exactly where you're aiming at them. But I just kind of aim middle of the ship and kind of hope that they land more upper hull. Now that's exactly what happens here. I mean, decent angling here, but you can't, if this was a battleship, definitely wouldn't have gotten the Citadel. Probably would have taken some damage from the Colorado, but it would have been as catastrophic as that. I mean, that's, you know, a third of your health chunked down in one salvo there, so that's kind of the danger that you have in the Graf Spee. And this guy, he's moving forward. I assumed he was torping me, and you'll see there I do deploy the sonar in response to that. It seems to me he probably launched this torps prior to moving into this position, which makes me kind of question why he's pushing forward this aggressively. But they are actually clearing out the side pretty well, so I think he's just trying to put on the pressure, and you know, these guys on this side are thinking, oh, let's just clear out these two battleships and the game will be wrapped up pretty quickly here. So take a blind shot there at him. Did switch over to HE and we were able to land a shot there. Now reading the map, the team on my western flank has 4 ships against, looks like probably 1, maybe they got something else over there. They need to be pushing either aggressively north to wipe that out and put pressure on the base, or they just need to come over and support us. Hanging back, kind of just taking their time dealing with one battleship is really putting a lot of pressure on me and this other battleship on this flank. And they're in the same situation. They vastly outnumber us over here, so it's kind of incumbent on us to slow this push. And this team on this side needs to be pushing more aggressively as well. I mean, both teams aren't really playing this how I would recommend doing. You know, a lot of passivity on this map, and just kind of in general, a lot of players aren't as aggressive as they need to be. Now we are taking these fairly long range shots at this guy, and you see we are landing the shots. I mean, it's not like you can't hit targets with this, it's just not pinpoint. So if you're aiming at like a specific spot on a ship, for instance, you can't reliably count on those shells to go exactly where you want them to go. But you can be comfortable taking longer range shots, even against destroyers like that. You know, we landed, I think it was like parts of the 3 or 4 salvos against that ship, and combined with my fellow battleship, but I haven't seen what he is. But we were able to eliminate that threat. So that removes the spotting threat against us. You see we're undetected. And because they're not pushing, you know, these ships should be either visible to me or I should be visible to them. But now I'm starting to get the feeling that they're turning around to go defend the base. I mean, we did have a destroyer that kind of pushed into the base trying to cap. Looks like their destroyer was able to kill him. But they might be getting the idea, okay, we need to go back and defend the base, which, that's fine. I mean, I think you should make these calls earlier on, though. They needed to either help stop that side that's not pushing as aggressively as it should be, or they should have pushed more aggressively into us. Here we do have AP loaded in again. This Myoka's, like, this is what you're looking for. Like, to be effective in this ship, you really need to be finding broadside cruisers, and you see there we have no problem eliminating him. So if you're playing against the Graf Spee, you definitely need to respect it if you're in a cruiser. Don't be thinking, oh, this thing can't hit the broadside of the barn. That's not the case, and the guns, they're strong guns against cruisers. They will punch through and they'll sink you. So play against the Graf Spee accordingly, but don't be afraid to shoot at it. You know, I mean, like I say, it's heavily armored for a cruiser, but it's not a battleship, so experiment with different shots. I've only played against Graf Spee so far in this ship, so I can't speak to how regular cruisers perform against it, you know, concerning AP. But I suspect you could probably land some decent shots, and I don't know if you'd be able to sit a load or not. Like I said, the ship just came out a couple hours ago, so I've just been playing this ship. And here we got the Colorado angling away. I did have AP loaded. Now this is kind of, you know, angled battleships like this, against, especially against the Colorado, which is a fairly heavily armored ship. I don't think you're going to have a lot of success shooting those. But I was waiting to see what this Fuso was doing. And he is just sailing broadside, so I'm comfortable shooting AP in this. And again, you're going to be seeing me aim kind of right at the middle of the ship, just maybe slightly above it. And at this range, the inaccuracy is definitely a factor. So if we only landed a shell there. But I'm kind of moving in fairly aggressively. I'm keeping an eye on his guns, and if I get the feeling he's about to shoot, you know, I need to basically turn almost vertical towards him. I don't want to have my nose directly at him because he could punch through that, but if we present a slight angle to the left, that's ideal. I mean, you still need to respect the AP. It still will damage you, but he's going to have a much harder time citadeling your ship if you're properly angled. But my thinking is closing in on him. A is a low hell ship. B, we need to kind of pressure these ships. because even though we're up numerically, we have 2 battleships that are chasing a kiting something or other way on the edge of the map. And just based on how they're all playing, I don't have a lot of confidence in what they're doing. And we don't want to let these ships just kind of get back there and wipe out those 2, because it's very easy to even up the match. And people that aren't aggressive enough in kind of pushing their advantages often let those advantages slip away. And you can see this Fuso's turned his attention to the base. I think we have an Atlanta in there that's kind of... he's capping, so he's putting pressure on him that way. But he's also shooting at that Colorado. Now you see here, once we get closer, shots are going more horizontal. A little bit more accuracy in play, and we'll start getting these, you know, low to mid thousands, you know, 3, 4, 5,000 salvos, which isn't bad. You know, I mean, it's not Battleship Citadel levels, but it's, you know, keep in mind this is kind of a hybrid cruisers, so you shouldn't be expecting these massive single strikes. I'll just bounce forward a couple minutes here. This is just kind of me getting in position on the cap, and then the Gato reacting. And we'll kind of demonstrate the HE shells here. HE damage 3,200, which is actually lower than the Aoba, but the fire chance is 23.5, like I mentioned. And that may be influenced by my Mueller build a little bit, I'm not 100% sure. Mods I'm running, aiming systems mod, and the steering gears, which is how I would set it up. The turret traverse, or not the turret traverse, the rudder shift on this was pretty abysmal. I think it was over 10. I got it down to 8.2 running that setup. Still quite a bit higher. I mean, it's 7 on the Graf, which is noticeably slow compared to the other ones. But that kind of mitigates some of the downsides of the ship. Turning radius is actually pretty tight, 680 compared to 620 on the Pensacola, but 680 is lower than all the other ships by, you know, 10, 20, 30. And speed, pretty slow. It's 29.1 on my build. You know, Aoba 36 for comparison, which is the highest at the tiers. So, again, it's not quite Battleship, but it's Battleship-esque. So, that's a look at the Graf Spee. I hope you did enjoy it. If you did, please hit the thumbs up. If you're new to the channel, consider subscribing. There's a lot of World of Warships coming all the time for you. Questions, comments for me, leave them below. I'd love to hear from you guys. And we'll see y'all later. Alright, peace.